arrow up. If you click on that, the chat will open on the right-hand side and you can paste your questions right there. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat if you would like to do that. We're looking forward to hearing from you. And then a note just about expanding our reach, in ministry. And if you are an author, like many of us are, we often hear the phrase building your platform, right? And I've even heard people lately on Substack reach that point of frustration where they're great writers and they're pitching it and they're sending it out there and they hear that word, they hear that back. You don't have a big enough platform yet. Work on your platform and come back. And for some people, platform has become a word that it's become a bad word, honestly. And so I would like to reiterate here before we start talking and asking questions of this panel that when we say platform here in ministry, you are not building yourself up. You are building God's kingdom and God's platform up because He has given you a message that is unique to you. And even if it's not unique to you, you're the only one who could say it like you can. And if there's anything I would encourage you to do is that, my friends, we do not have a lot of time left. And some of you know, I had a near-death experience in August and went to heaven and came back. And that's what my blog is all about. But that was really, really given to me that, we don't have a lot of time here. Now is the time to look at whatever ministry or calling God has you doing and to get out there and do it. So we hope that we encourage you to do that today. And don't think of platform as building your numbers, for you, but think of it as building kingdom influence and bringing more people in for that. So welcome. We are glad to have you here. We're going to go around the room and introduce the panelists. So why don't we start with Jon?
Well, thank you, Julie, for having me. This is great. I love Substack. I think I wrote a blog yesterday about how it's good to doubt and ask questions, and I've wrestled with Substack, especially over the last month. So I really feel like this is going to be a great conversation. I'm Jon. I'm an author. I'm a writer. I'm based in the Dallas area, originally from Wisconsin. I have two books out. Finding Rest and the Finding Rest workbook on faith, mental health, and addiction. I have faith and mental health. I have another book coming out on addiction this fall called Confessions of a Christian Alcoholic. That's me. That's a fun story. And I write at the intersection of faith and mental health and radical vulnerability. And so I'm excited to be here. I'm on Substack. I'm a bestseller on Substack, and can't wait to chat more about it.
Great. Thank you, Jon. Glad to have you here. Caroline.
Hi, everyone. I'm Caroline Beidler. I have to say, Tanner, I loved your excitement there when Jon said he was a bestseller. Did you see that, Jon? Tanner was like, yes.
Also, go Pack.
Go
Tanner,
Pack.
really?
I got you, buddy. Go Pack, go.
Oh boy. Okay,
Caroline's
side
a Packers fan
conversation.
too.
So that's a perfect segue because I'm from Wisconsin and love the Green Bay Packers as well. I'm so glad to be here and so many friends on the call today. I just love talking about writing and faith and how we can have integrity in this world we're living in with publishing and just how things have changed. I write about addiction recovery, mental health recovery, and trauma recovery, and really have a heart for serving women in our local community who are struggling with substance use and just all of the challenges that life brings. I believe that substance use and addiction is a symptom of something greater. And so a lot of my writing and work and one-on-one ministry in our local community aims to really kind of get at the root of some of that. And I've had personal experience in that space, and my family is walking along a recovery journey with me. And so a couple books out there. My latest is You Are Not Your Trauma, Uproot Unhealthy Patterns, Heal the Family Tree. Beautiful picture behind me, shameless plug. But really talking through, again, those roots of things that we struggle with for many women like myself in addiction recovery, traumatic experiences early on. And so I'm excited to just hopefully keep writing and keep going in this space. So thanks for inviting me, Julie.
You are welcome. Thanks for being here. All right. And then we have Tanner.
Hello, my name is Tanner Olson. Just happy to be here. I spent a couple of years in Wisconsin. I grew up in Florida, went to college in Wisconsin. I lived there for like 7.5 years. And
Where in Wisconsin did you go to college?
I went to Concordia, Wisconsin, outside of
Yeah.
Milwaukee, and then I lived in northern Wisconsin. I worked at a camp up there for like 3 years. Like the camp was in, and that's where I really started writing a lot, was in northern Wisconsin. Depression and isolation. Great to start
Yeah,
writing.
right. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
Carolyn
she
and
still
I
come.
became addicts after living there. So that tells you all you need to know.
Oh
I got
dear.
addicted to writing, I guess. All right, we'll talk about that later. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm an author, a poet, spoken word poet, and speaker. So I get to travel around the country, often with musicians, and we host evenings of music and poetry, and they're nights of rest and hope, and they're a ton of fun. I just released a children's book last week. It's titled "All the Things I Say to God." It's about a little girl who begins praying all by herself. I'm super excited about that and so glad that it's finally out. And I'm not like a trained writer. I've been doing it for 12 years. I love writing. I love people. I love connecting and talking about hope and Jesus. And so I think that's why I'm here. And I look forward to learning from all of you. All right, I've said too much. See you later.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks. So Tanner is also a talented poet. And, in the Christian world, we don't see as many poets these days. I know that the organization I'm with, Cascade Christian Writers, we definitely try to enhance poetry learnings and have speakers that come to conferences that talk about poetry. And we do a poetry book each year of compilations because it's actually really important, but it needs to be out there more. So if you follow Tanner on Substack, you will get some pretty cool inspirational poems. So that's great. All right, Kate, your turn.
Hi, I'm Kate Orson. I'm from England, now living in Italy. And I think compared to all of you, I'm quite a new Christian. I became a Christian in 2021. I was in the New Age for 20 years. And so I'm writing on Substack, I'm writing about my experience in the New Age and like hopefully trying to reach some non-believers. I am the author of a parenting book, which I wrote before I became a Christian. It's called Tears Heal, and I don't agree with everything I put in the book because my thinking has changed a lot. But I still write about parenting for some Christian websites in the UK. And so my parenting book was published with a conventional, traditional publisher. And at the moment, I've been writing some devotionals where I take Bible verses in different languages to learn, like I'm using it to learn Italian and other European languages. So those ones I have self-published.
Excellent and very clever. I loved looking up her books. And you have more than the Italian one I saw, Kate. You have a devotional for learning French, right? And some other ones as well.
And Spanish. Yeah, I've done
Okay.
French and Spanish and I'm gonna do German. It's just like with all the juggling of everything else, it takes time to put them
Yeah.
together. But
Yeah,
yeah.
that's impressive. That's impressive. Even that all those languages is very impressive.
But the secret is I don't know them. It's just technology because you can
Hmm.
when you go on the Bible online, you can
Right.
get up the Bible verses in different languages. So I'm just taking them and I need to know the basics to put the words together and stuff. But I'm not like an amazing linguist that it might seem. But yeah,
Right.
not at all.
Definitely a cool idea though, and maybe a little bit of a challenge, right? If you work on memorizing scripture, maybe think about memorizing it in another language, maybe that would be helpful. So thanks for that, Kate. Very cool. All right, Ashley, you want to give a little intro for you?
Sure. My name is Ashley Dudek, and I have a full-time ministry to help people just get equipped to the heart of the Lord. I have a huge passion just for people to know the Father's heart. And so I teach on the secret place from Psalms 91. So the secret place in a nutshell is your time with Jesus, but at the core, it is a life that is cultivated for him. So I love to equip and teach on how to bring Jesus with you at all times. I also have a huge heart for the end times and teach on the end times as well.
Excellent, which is how I found her. So that probably doesn't surprise you.
Mhm.
All right. And my name is Julie, as you know. I oversee Cascade Christian Writers. I am an author with a fiction series on human trafficking and recovering from that. And now I write about heaven on Substack. So that's my heaven blog that's going on. So I was explaining to the panelists why I had them come, and I'm so privileged that they made time because I know they're very busy people. And that is because Substack can really be a mecca for Christianity, for people who love Jesus, who love God, for ministry, for whatever you feel called to. And I think it's important that we understand that going into it, that, part of it is not just, getting our words out there, but of course, bringing people in, right? And helping and supporting, encouraging them to start their ministry. So I am looking forward to hearing from all of them and learning a lot today. And I hope that you are too. So let's go around the room. And again, those who just came in, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat if you would like to. We would love to learn a little bit more about you. And if you have any questions that come up, put them in the chat versus speaking so that we can keep it muted here for the recording purposes. So our first question today, and we will address some of you asked questions in registration, so we'll be doing those as well. How has being on Substack helped you and your ministry? And I would like actually to start with Tanner. Do you mind if I pick on you? I'm going to pick on Tanner because he's right next to me on in the boxes, because he released a book this last week with incredible numbers. So let's chat about that.
I don't know if incredible numbers is right, but it was so fun. It was so fun to release and to share. Um, was your question, how has being on Substack helped you in your ministry?
Yes.
Yeah. As I love Substack. It is a fun, unique space. It's different from being on Instagram or Facebook. And it's even a little bit different than doing like face-to-face ministry as well. I think one of my favorite features about Substack is I've gotten to have a ton of conversations with a couple of people who are on here too, whether through email or through like the Substack chat, and to be able to learn from them. Being on Substack has deepened my faith and inspired and encouraged me to keep writing. Even the writers that are here, like reading their work, like seeing Jon post so frequently has been such an encouragement to be like, hey man, like this guy you can do this too. Like I'm a competitive human being, but it's like competitive with hope. Like I want to share the beauty of Christ's love, how it has wrecked and changed my life with the people who are seeking out hope on Substack. Through poetry, through stories, through grief, through frustration, through it all. So I feel like, I don't know, being on Substack and the community that Substack is has kind of just like kept me going. It's given my it's given me as a writer new life. I wouldn't say it's given my faith new life, like that's solid, but it has given my writing, my pursuit of being a better writer new life, because it's just a beautiful community.
Mhm. It surely is. Do you feel like you've met people on Substack that have helped you
Oh
or you've
yeah.
helped them?
I feel, yeah, it's a
Mhm.
lot. It's a community, and I think when you find yourself in a healthy community, you're helping each other. Whether that's through encouragement or through the words that I've written, through words that other people have written. Most definitely, I've sent a lot of messages to folks just like, hey, I randomly found your work. It's beautiful. Keep on writing, and that has been sent back to me as well. I think the other thing about Substack is it's it's trying to be all about the numbers, but it's still not. Like you come across people who have like they've written something and it's exploded, and yet they're still like just like writing their own thing, like doing their own stuff. It's not phasing them, it's not really changing them. They're just like, oh cool, I wrote something that resonates with other people. Okay, I'm gonna keep writing. And I think that's kind of what it all comes back to, at least in the circles that I'm on in Substack, is it's just everyone's throwing encouragement at each other, unlike other social media spaces.
Who shall go
Like if you're
unnamed? Yes.
if you're on Substack, like I don't, it's hard to. I mean, maybe I'm not looking hard enough, but I keep finding people who are just like, I wrote this and I love what you've written. Like,
Mhm.
here's what I wrote. I'm going to encourage you along the way as well. It's almost as if like we're all just looking out for each other. I feel like I'm on a team, and I haven't been on a team since I was in like college, so this is pretty great
Oh. Very genuine people for sure. Great.
for
Thank you,
sure.
Tanner. John, what about you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think for me, it's probably twofold, maybe even threefold. I think one is it gave me a ministry. And I use that term in a sense with some trepidation because I never saw myself as having a ministry.
Mhm.
And yet, in fact, I was DMing with someone on a different platform yesterday, and he was a pastor, and he said, man, it's so great to be a partner in ministry with you here. And I said, and it like stopped me in my tracks, because I'm like, and I said, his name's John. I said, John, I had to sit there for a little bit. I said, because I've never considered myself as having a ministry. And yet, I think it is true that what I found on Substack is it has turned my writing into a ministry. And what I mean by that is it's given me a bigger, to use the word, platform than I ever had before. And so, I went from, and not everyone's going to experience this. Okay. So please. But I started Substack last March with 897 people, and I'm now at 8,199. Maybe I crossed to 200 because someone might have followed me as a result of this. But that, and there's some things that I'm doing there, right? It's not just all purely organic growth, but I would say that one of the things, and Substack wants you to see this, is Substack shows you and lets you know people who have come to your Substack and subscribed to it via the Substack network, via recommendations from other Substacks. And so those are people that I never would have been able to reach with my message had I not been on Substack. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is it's given me, I have monetization turned on, and I want to clarify, because I was talking to someone earlier this week, and they're like, man, you're killing it, right? Like you probably making like 10 grand a month on Substack. And I laughed so hard. I'm like, bro, I haven't made anywhere near that in the life of Substack, but one thing that I think is important, and not everyone is ministries, and I know, I work for Kirk Cameron, and I can't tell you how many emails we got saying like, Kirk, why are you charging for this stuff? You should give it away for free. Mm-hmm. To which I say there's multiple verses about not, muzzling the ox when he's treading the grain. But one of the benefits of having paid turned on is what I've realized is the Substack audience, the people who are there, and even if you don't have paid turned on, I think this is true, they're much more engaged, right? So when I'm going to my publisher last spring and pitching my newest book, my Instagram following is like, piddly, right? But they saw my Substack audience even at the time and said, oh, we put a higher value on Substack audience followers because they're more engaged. Anyone these days, and I'm not going to point out names, but I was looking at someone on Instagram the other day, 45,000 followers, right? Well, all you have to do is go to their most recent posts. And if you see on their most recent post, they've got 10 likes, 5 comments, guess what? So many of those are fake, right? In the past, publishers and whoever are making decisions, oh my gosh, they have 45,000 followers. But if you're only getting 10 likes and 5 comments and whatnot, a lot of those are fake or they're bought or whatever. Substack is, those people are, 99% real. And so people put a value on that. So what I have found is not only have I gotten access to more people, I've gotten access to higher quality people. And so I'll leave it at that.
Definitely. Would you say it's helped your book sales, Jon?
Definitely helped book sales a little bit. It's kind of hard to know. I will be publishing, I kind of entered this to play a long game. Is I knew I had to do something different with my email list. So I did Substack with the hopes that when I did launch my book, which it comes out in October, that I'll be able to see. And it's definitely helped keep, my other book sales active and current. But it remains to be seen. I mean, I'm watching Tanner closely to see how a book launch does on Substack, and so I'll report back for sure in the fall.
We're looking forward to hearing that result for sure. Kate, what about you? Has being on Substack helped your ministry, helped you get the word out?
Yeah, I think so. I've had a Substack for quite a while, but it was only when I went on a Facebook fast that I realized, oh, there's notes here, and you can actually like, build your audience. Before, I was just kind of sending it as a newsletter to people that I already knew from Facebook. And yeah, and it has helped me grow and get more subscribers. And I'm probably going to hopefully write a book in the future. Like I've had different ideas, so I'm not sure if it's solid yet. But I like the idea of building a platform for a future book without having to use Facebook or Instagram, because Instagram's not really for me. And then with Facebook, I just feel like the algorithm has kind of died. Whereas the algorithm on Substack feels very alive, and it feels like a good time to join and to meet new people. Whereas on Facebook, I wasn't really connecting with a new audience. So yeah, it's really helpful in that respect.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes, traditional publishers will tell you that there are platforms that sell books and there are ones that do not. And Facebook is not a big platform for selling books. Now, personally, I love the interaction on Facebook. If I post something, people da 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 da, and we have good discussions there. They aren't as good for sales. Instagram came along and was better for sales. TikTok came along and was better for sales. But now Substack has pulled out and gone above all of those. And I think it's, as Tanner mentioned, people are so genuine there, and truly want to help support each other, that it really can be a great platform to build for actual book sales as well, if that is your goal. So, Caroline, how has Substack helped your ministry?
Yeah, well, great question. And I just love hearing from everyone and have so much just similar thoughts as folks who've shared already. I think for me, when I've really felt moved to, I've written for a really long time, ever since I was a little girl, but when I really felt moved to be an author, which I've learned it's two separate things. Like we can be writers, and being an author today, there's a lot that goes into that. I felt all this pressure to perform and all this pressure to fit myself into this certain box of what someone today needs to do to market or to have a platform. So like doing the dances on Instagram and doing this and doing that. And I was listening to another writer on Substack, Stephanie Duncan Smith, and she has Slant Letter, which is fabulous. She's used to be an editor at Baker Books, and I think works for Harper One now. Anyways, I was listening to her, and she said that you don't have to perform. And I have that actually on my desk written down, because when I made that switch in my heart of like, I don't have to do all of this stuff like that the world is telling me I need to do. And when I discovered Substack, it just felt so much more in line with the values I have as a Christian and as an author, where, I can write here. I can meet other people who like to write. I can meet other people who like to read books, which, there are a lot of folks today that don't like to read books, and, that's okay. But for me, I like to hang out where the readers and writers are. And so it just felt like this very natural space for me to be in. And so I feel like the pressure to perform is off. Like I can just show up and write prayerfully, mindfully. I can meet new people. I met Tanner on Substack. I've met so many people on Substack. John and I reconnected because of Substack. It's just amazing how it brings people together. And I think as being a woman in recovery, community is so key to my life. That accountability, the fellowship, the connection, that whole where two or more are gathered kind of idea. Substack is this hub of fellowship. And at the same time, it's also a mission field. I've felt very much that, I can speak to folks who love to read and write and also meet people. And a lot of my content isn't super faith forward, but what I love to do is sprinkle in that salt and sprinkle in the wisdom that hopefully will move someone's heart towards what God wants for them, in some form. And so anyways, I feel it's definitely this place for fellowship and really a mission field today. Now I do have, and we may be moving to this in later in this hour, but I have some concerns that have come up about the platform and some current concerns I have in terms of the way things are trending. And, you know, I love the fact that I've been able to connect with so many new folks. In terms of book sales and all those things, I don't know. I don't know. I just have to like give that up and turn that over and just keep trying to show up in the way that, God wants me to show up. And right now that's still writing on Substack. And I have to say too, Tanner, Jon's consistency, there have been several weeks where I'm like, I am not finishing the Saturday letter because Jon's amazing newsletter that comes out almost every day. So Jon, you have inspired me. So that accountability piece too, has been so helpful with Substack.
Yeah,
So
Jon, you're really messing us all up, bro.
And
thanks.
let me say, I appreciate that, guys. But let me say this, and this is like, and not to over spiritualize it, but I joke with my audience that my audience is part of the top 3% of Substack, and what I mean by that is only 3% of people on Substack publish every day, right? So it's very rare. And the only reason I do it is because last March God told me to do it, and like I wish He didn't. Like there are days where, and listen, there are some days I miss or whatnot, but I just keep checking in and He says write every day. And I'm like, okay. So that's not necessarily like a business decision. It's not even necessarily a best practice. It's just being obedient. And I'll continue to do it until He tells me to stop.
And I think part of it too is like finding what works for you. And like that currently works for you. Yeah, you had to make a sacrifice to do it. But like I try to post every Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But like
Yeah.
to have that in the back of your head, like this is what I'm gonna do. This is my rhythm that works for my life right now. And it might change, and to allow yourself to let change come and find you. But I think having it in your head, like, okay, like if this is what if I'm committed to this, then I'm gonna post on these days and stay consistent.
And that looks like, by the way, that I usually get up like at 4 or 5 in the morning because my time with the Lord, if I don't spend time with the Lord, I have nothing to write about. Because my commitment to my audience also, by the way, is I don't plan things out. I literally get up. I mean, there are some ideas I have throughout the day and I'll put them as a draft, like, hey, this, and maybe come back to it. But I'm going to spend more time with the Lord and I'm going to write what He tells me to write that day. Right. So I get up at like 4 or 5 because I have to spend time with the Lord first, then write, then bring my kids to school. And so that's the sacrifice I have to make.
And let's clarify real quick for the sake of people that are fairly new to Substack. There are two different types to write on, ways to write on Substack. You don't have to write a complete blog post. They have instituted something that they call notes, which would look like maybe like your Facebook feed. And so I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, but I believe when Tanner and Jon are talking about like posting every day or 3 times a week, that it's not always a full blog post. It could be just a note that resonates with people. Is that correct?
No, actually,
No. Okay, good.
I'm
Glad I
talking,
asked.
I do, I consider notes the cherry on top, but
Okay.
when I'm talking about posting, I think Tanner as well, is we're talking about an
Okay.
actual email post that we send out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And like the question, someone just said consistency builds followers, subs. I would
Mhm.
agree. Like if you show up and give what you have and you keep it consistent, like I post a couple of notes every day. And some of those, I mean, if you pay close enough attention, are recycled and repeated because you have
Mhm.
new people who come in. It's still, these things I'm posting are still true. But then when it comes to actual posts, not notes, the posts that land in your inbox, that's every Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Mhm. Okay, thanks for that. But a note to all of you, currently I do a blog post once a week and I'm still growing there. I don't want you to feel discouraged if you don't. If somebody had told me you need to post 3 blog posts a week, I probably would not have come to Substack because I've got so much else going on and I know a lot of you do too. So keep in mind that you can also just start slow, right? And see where it gets you, and see who you connect with and see where God takes you on that, but that might be a possibility for you. All right, thank you very much. We appreciate that. We kind of went over what's different about Substack versus other platforms. We kind of did that. I think I'll go ahead and skip that one. Let's talk about one thing specifically. Now, all of your panelists have given some tips for socials and Substack, and it's in a PDF. And Ashley has been posting the link for that. So I would definitely download that because you're going to get information you don't hear here in person. But let's go around, and if everybody could highlight at least one thing that has really helped them on Substack grow their ministry, one thing specific that maybe and if you don't have it yourself, maybe you've seen somebody else do it. So let's do that question. Tanner, I'll start with you.
I know you asked for one thing, but I've got two.
Okay.
I think it's already been mentioned a couple of times, but I would say like before I write, I pray. It's not uh, I don't like to write without praying. I often don't have anything to say if I don't pray. It's that, and then it's remaining consistent. Like we mentioned, like I have a rhythm that seems to work for me, and it's a rhythm that I've kind of stuck with on kind of all social media platforms. Staying consistent, offering what I know and what I have, and learning from other writers, but not comparing myself to other writers. So like, we keep throwing this example out, but like, Jon posts every single day. Like I'm not comparing myself to him. I'm encouraged by him. Um, and he gives me new ideas. Oh, he's posting this. Oh, that's a really beautiful headline. All these different things. And so it's like this is a place to learn. So, pray, stay consistent, and you're no reason to compare. Like just everything is a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Lord says comparing is not good. In fact, it's a sin. I think honestly, that's for a reason. I teach in my recovery classes that I teach, that it does a number on our mental health, because how often do you compare yourself to other people and come out on the top, right? Very rarely. God knew that. God knew that the more we filtered that in and said, they're better than me and look at their following compared to mine, and that would just take us down as far as our mental health. He made you each unique, and we will all go forward at the pace that he has planned for us individually, right? Great. Good thoughts. Caroline, do you have something that you would recommend that's been the most helpful?
Hmm. Well, I love, just as I mentioned, the connection. And so I think some other, Tanner may have mentioned this, when I read something that really connects with me, I will send someone a message and just say, hey, this really spoke to me, or this really encouraged me. And I think that just letting someone know, because a lot of times, whether someone has 5 followers or readers or 50,000, they may not see the DM, but I just like to be encouraging and let folks know that, what they're doing matters. I think we're just so saturated with content too, that when I first started Substack, I like subscribed to all the newsletters, and my email became a very hard place for me to go to because I had so much coming into it. So I've had to be really mindful about guarding my heart and my inbox in terms of what content I'm consuming. And even through like notes and different things, sometimes those things that are coming at me might not necessarily align with, who I am as a Christian woman in recovery. And so I need to be really careful and kind of guard my heart and mind as I'm consuming things on platforms like Substack. But thankfully there's a way to meet folks who we can connect with. So, and the other thing that's been really helpful for me too, and just growing my Substack, has been through the recommendations. And that happens when, sometimes people recommend me that don't know me very well, but usually it's people that are friends. I recommend Jon's letter, and folks recommend me that we have a relationship. There's that trust built. And so I think that's a meaningful way when you have that trust in not just the person, but like the content that they're sharing, to be able to recommend other letters that are moving to you, because that really does help, other authors like us reach new audiences.
Yeah, that's important. Caroline, what would you say about I see a little bit of a trend as far as I'll recommend you and you recommend me, right? But sometimes there's people are recommending me that I don't necessarily think we share the same readership. And I also want to make sure, they write well and that they're posting consistently. That's important to me, that I'm sending people to things that are built. What do you think about that concept? Is that expected?
Yeah, I guess I hadn't really heard of anything like that. I'm always late to the party when it comes to some of these newer things. Just like I would think I was a little late to Substack, but no, I think it's all about that trust and relationship. So I wouldn't do any sort of like, you know, I'll recommend you, that kind of situation, unless I really like know and trust and appreciate the content and the words that are going into the world. And I think, again, we just really need to be mindful about how we're acting in these virtual spaces, because, really would I recommend you to sit down and have a coffee with a friend,
Mhm.
Jon, Tanner, some other folks that I've met on Substack, absolutely get a cup of coffee with Jon. I highly recommend that. But I wouldn't do that for just anybody.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I just love to hop in there because I've gotten messages like that, and I think I put this in the chat, but it really does turn me off. There's, and I say this respectfully, is like, just because you follow me, or even if you're a paid subscriber, that doesn't entitle you to what I consider a recommendation the highest thing you can give on Substack. And so when I do recommend something, it means I am saying to my audience, I have vetted this
Right.
person, I approve. I'm not saying I blanketly approve everything that they've written, but so to me it cheapens it. And so just don't do that. I would just say don't do that.
No, I appreciate that. I take deep responsibility there as well. So I'm glad that I am not the only one. So thanks for that. Kate, did you have any thoughts?
Yes, I actually haven't recommended anyone on Substack yet. And I think part of it is like, now I'm a Christian, I feel like such a huge responsibility, like that I need to make sure the person's okay and everything. And I haven't taken the time to like fully check people out, like read a few articles from everyone, but not like all their stuff. So yeah, I haven't done that yet.
Okay,
Did
no
you
worries.
want to answer the other question?
Quick question on what you just said. Do you tend to follow or subscribe back to people who follow and subscribe to you?
I did at the beginning when I was building my audience, but now, yeah, like Caroline said, my emails have got quite large. So now I tend not to. And also I kind of don't want to get into that thing of like, you subscribe to me and I'll subscribe to you, because then people just unsubscribe in the end. So
Right.
yeah, when I genuinely am interested in someone, that's when I subscribe.
Good. Okay. Thanks for that. Caroline mentioned something about her inbox, and so I wanted to pop in here because we did have a question come up in chat about it as well. I have had some people subscribe that then say yes to my recommendations without realizing it, and all of a sudden their emails full of, newsletters coming in, and we all have to guard our time. And what I found to be really helpful with that was to go into settings and turn the emails off. And I just get them on the app. So I download the Substack app, and everybody I follow or subscribe to will come up on the top bar as they put a new post in. And sometimes I catch them, sometimes I don't. Unless I really, really want your content and will take time to read it, I don't have it come via email. So you do have those options in Substack, so you're not so overwhelmed with the inbox, just to let you know on that. And Jon says he usually starts with a follow instead of a subscribe. Yeah, I would agree. So, follow isn't as much of a commitment, right? Follow means I want to hear from you occasionally. Subscribe means I really want to hear from you. And so there's a little bit of difference in the lingo there. Okay, so let's go to a couple featured questions. And the first one I have is for Tanner. Tanner, congratulations on your children's book. It's so good. I can't wait to read it
Thanks.
to my granddaughter. I really appreciate that you wrote it. And you got the #1 best-selling category at Amazon for a bit there. And it looks like you're out doing signings and, shipping 60, 70 books to schools and all these very cool things. So can you talk a little bit more how you feel Substack helped you get there where you're at?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to note, like I've been doing this for 12 years. I didn't just like start doing this. I've been traveling since 2019. Like I've been a full-time writer, supporting myself through selling books and speaking engagements since 2019. I think I got on Substack like a year or two ago. I think the first year I was on it, I didn't really take it too seriously. I had no idea what it was. People were just on there and I was like, me too, I'll be here. And I really wasn't. I feel like I've been taking it more seriously for the last maybe 18 months or so. But I can say that, like, it kind of goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, that this community is so engaged and encouraging. And like my readers in the community that I'm part of here on Substack, like I'm always talking about prayer. I'm always talking about writing. I'm always offering short little prayers and thoughts. So this book wasn't something like out of left field. Like they kind of saw this coming if they were to really think about it. And so the through the release of this book, through being able to share about how the book has been performing and stories that have come out of the book, uh, I did not feel like I was like oversharing. I didn't feel like I was being super annoying. I think I made a couple of posts about it too, where I was like, it's book launch week. I'm going to be writing a lot about the book is releasing. I might be slightly annoying, but I don't care if that annoys you because I'm super excited about this and I hope you enjoy it. I think it's also a thing where I'm also sharing something I've created with a community of people who are always creating things, whether that's a post, a podcast, or a book. So they know the things that I'm going through. They know the prayers that I'm praying, the things that I'm worried about, what I'm focused on. Like they get it. And so it felt like um I felt like it was my turn to tell the group about what I was creating
Mhm.
rather than being like, I'm the only one doing this. Because I know, like, John's got a book coming. We're going to celebrate it when it comes out. When other writers have a book come out, we're going to celebrate it. Because I think and I hope that um, through book releases, like Substack just gets this reputation for being a place where your work is seen and celebrated and you are encouraged to keep going. Um, where you do get a moment for everyone to clap for you. So I used to work at a camp and we would do like name games at the very beginning when all the campers would get together. And we would do this thing called run or dance. I don't know why my mind thought of this, but I did. But there'd be like 20 of us, like middle schoolers or like elementary school kids in a circle. And we'd all just met and we don't know each other. And we'd say, hey, do you want to run or dance? And you could dance in the circle or run around the circle. But all we would do is we would chant your name and clap the whole time. And releasing this book, I felt like it was my turn to be in the circle where everyone was just like clapping as I danced. So it was
Mhm.
kind of fun. So I would say, like, I think my advice for other writers on Substack, when you do release a book, podcast, like whatever it is, like invite people into it.
Mhm.
Don't just make one small post about it. Let them know what's going on. Um, it was just such a joy to be able to release the book. I'm super honored by it. And thanks to everyone who's gotten a copy uh, or is about to get a copy. Hey, I don't know. I think that's what I got. Any follow-ups for that?
Oh.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I have two things that I want to add to that. The first one is so my background is in the news business and managing editor for a news website. So as 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 much as I have been in the weeds of writing and content, there's also been like the under the hood stuff, the marketing and kind of all that stuff. And I think the stat is it takes 7 to 11 times of someone seeing something to actually like click on it and make a decision,
Hmm.
right? And
Yep.
so I think that's a good reminder. It's like Tanner's book is like at minimum, people generally, statistically speaking, have to see something about his book 7 times before they will buy it. And so I think I keep that in mind too. But I shirk away from that. Like I get it. Like I know that stat, and yet it still feels, I get it. And the second thing closely related to that is, and I put this in the chat way earlier, but it's like, for those who are turned off by the term platform or I don't want to feel salesy, and I say this with the caveat of everything that Caroline said before is really important, and I want to echo that. Where don't play the comparison game. You don't have to do a dance on TikTok. Like do what the Lord has called you to do, right? But on the other, not even the other side, because it's not the antithetical statement of it, but if you have a message that you feel like the Lord is giving you, I think you also have a responsibility to do whatever you can to get that message out, right? And so it's like if you were a pastor and you were preaching and you're like, the Lord has given me this message, and you never like do anything to get anyone in the pews, like wouldn't you say that's a bad pastor, right? Like that's he's not doing his job, right? If you have we just came out of Easter. How many ads did you see for Easter services, right? And you can debate about whether those are great or not, but those people feel like, hey, we're doing something really great. We want people to come to the Lord, so we're going to talk about it, right? And so I think, however you want to principalize that, but if you are writing and you have a message, like, it behooves you to put it on your other social media channels, to talk about it, to tell people about what you're doing. Otherwise, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, like, did it fall, right? And so it's like, if you've written a post and you don't tell anyone about it, I think sometimes it can be, you're doing a disservice to just say, like, all right, Lord, I've written it, now it's up to you, right? And the Lord's like, well, maybe you should do a little something to tell people about that.
I
Number
love
one,
that.
great use of the word behooves. Well done. Second, like, yeah, not everyone's gonna see what you post the first time. Like, so share it again, schedule it.
Right.
Like,
Right.
it's okay. Like, and here's the thing, if people think that you're being annoying, they're just gonna stop following you. And that's
And they're
totally
not your
okay.
audience anyways, then.
That's not your audience.
Right.
You're good. Just keep going.
Yeah, let's keep going.
I listen to that point, Tanner. Like every probably once a year, I'll send out a post that'll be like, "Stop following me," and people are like, "What?" And I'll say, "Listen, if this is the first email you're opening up in 6 months, if you're annoyed by this,
See ya.
like go, like, please,
Yeah.
I want the people around who actually want my stuff."
I think it's like you're not going to write for everyone.
Right.
So don't try to write for everyone. Write for your audience. And also, just like you are changing, so is your audience, and the people who are reading your stuff are changing too. And there might be a time where, like, hey, I don't like, there are people from Instagram from way back in the day who were like they were faithful followers of my writing. They do not follow me anymore. And it hurts, but guess what? It's okay. It's just the internet.
Truth. Yeah, I used to not like to get unfollow emails. I used to try to get them back, but somebody very wise told me, said, they're not your audience, they're not your people. And I'm like, no, you're right. They're not. So honing it in, but your people, whoever that might be, is out there. And they may very well be on Substack. So thanks for that, guys. I appreciate it. Let's start with Caroline on this next one. I don't want this to be a negative session about Substack. All of us are still on Substack, even though there's been some challenges. But it sounds like both Jon and Caroline have some concerns as well. So I would like us to address those issues too. Caroline, would you start us on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think I got onto Substack at an interesting time before Notes. It was kind of this, I don't know, maybe a couple months or something. No notes, it was just the post, the long form posts. And I was just absolutely in love with the platform. I had just grown so tired of the newsfeedy kind of like scrolling. I just wanted a deeper connection with folks and a more meaningful connection to the content that I was consuming. And so when I started Substack, I was just like, yes, finally. And then all of a sudden, here's notes and here's videos. I was like, wait. This was really great before this. And so I've had to balance that, and then also feeling the pressure. Well, maybe I should be doing more notes, and is that better for the algorithm? And, all of those questions I think we ask ourselves when we have this calling to share a message. So I've just had to kind of balance some of that out. And I understand Substack's also a business and they want to grow and they have their own business model. But I hope that it continues to remain an alternative to something different than, not just in name or kind of messaging, but actually different than what we've experienced before in terms of a social media platform. Because I think so many of us, especially creatives, are hungry for what's different than what we've been experiencing on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the other places, X or whatever it is. So anyways, that's kind of a little bit of my frustration, also in terms of, open rates and things like that seem really variable. And I'm always, kind of a little bit of a pessimist at heart. Like, how exactly does it work that people see the content? How exactly does the algorithm work? But I've really just had to kind of prayerfully be like, okay, this is a platform like anything else. It felt a little bit more solid before, the advent of notes and other things, but ultimately, where I feel the Lord needs those of us who have this calling to share our message is also in local places outside of the virtual space. And so for me, my work in ministry is very much grounded in community offline. And I'm good with that. Like I feel good with that. So, for me, it's just kind of balancing some of the, I don't know, changes, but I'm curious other folks' thoughts on that. Am I the only one who was like, no notes? Or yeah, what are other people's thoughts on that?
Any other thoughts on that?
I'll come back to the notes part. Well, I would say on notes is my advice to people there is more so than like Facebook or Instagram. You have a lot more control over the algorithm in Substack. And so I joke like, you'll see this, and I think I joke because I think people don't realize that it actually doesn't do anything. But like people will be like, they'll post a note, be like, Substack, show me more people who are blah 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 blah. And I'm like, that doesn't really do it, right? What does do it is if you go up into the three dots, or when you see something you don't like, you go to the three dots and you say, snooze this person, or don't show me posts like this. And so I would say my notes feed is my favorite social media platform feed. And because I've curated it, if you will, and you can go to the different categories on top. And so you can go to, and people don't realize this, you can go on notes in the app and go just to people you follow. Like people were like, I'm seeing a lot of things about blah, 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 blah lately. And I'm like, just change it. You can literally change it in 22 seconds. You can go to only people you follow, right? So I'd encourage people to use some of those tools, especially for notes. I think for me personally, when it comes to Substack, up until January, February, and I've written a post on this, and I'll put the link in here. But I was all in. I was like, Substack could do no wrong. And then I started seeing some of the drawbacks. And for me, the drawbacks are, in the end, Substack is a startup company. And I've worked in startups before. And their goal is to grow as big as possible, as fast as they can, so that all the people who have put blood, sweat, and tears into this can sell and get their payday. Like, and that's not like an anti-capitalist rant or anything. That's just like, that's what startups do, right? And so what I have experienced in some of the nuts and bolts is some of the growing pains and drawbacks that come with that. And that is, they're trying to grow so fast, and they are innovative, and they are rolling things out that can be really good, and probably for a vast majority of people, awesome. But if you are one of the people that gets one of those bugs, it can be really hard to deal with. And so that's what I came to this spring. I wrote a post about it. I finally got some answers, and so I decided to stay. But I was considering leaving because I was having some of these problems, and I had put all of my eggs into the Substack basket, and without kind of tempering maybe a little bit my excitement. And if I got to the point where I needed to leave, I was kind of like, oh crap. So my advice to people in ministries is, don't put all your eggs in one basket, and so that can look simply like, maybe back up your list every week, right? I wasn't doing that. That was stupid, right? But maybe it's back up your list every week. Maybe it's, have a separate free MailChimp account if you need to. And understand that there are some of these things that are happening in the back end of Substack that you will likely encounter some problems, and then you have to make the decision: is that enough to leave or not? For me, finally got some answers, and it wasn't, so I'm staying.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Pros and cons. So we are already running low on time, and we have a ton of questions. So we will probably go a little bit over time. If you have to go, any of you, including panelists, I understand. Just go, and we'll continue for a bit on here, but there will be a recording that you can use to catch up with anything that you missed. So one of the questions that came in from registration is, should our approach to Substack differ from other platforms? If so, how? Thoughts on that, panelists?
Yes. Since no one else was answering, I'd say yes. And the reason I say that, well, I say it in this way, is that Substack is a content first website. And so I would say, Caroline talked about notes, and some people I've seen, go crazy on notes and like that's their thing. And like that's great, but that's a very few minority. That's a minority, right? And so, but Tanner, even though you raise your hand there on that, like you put out really good other content. You know what I'm saying? Like if people find you in notes, like, and this is when I was in the news business. People are like, oh, you're clickbait headlines, and even some people like they're like clickbait, and I'm like, no, it's only clickbait if it doesn't deliver. If it delivers,
Right.
that's actually just called like. You ever listen to the radio and they're like, coming up, we have a great interview, and you'll never believe this. Like you don't call in the radio station and be like, I can't believe you teased that interview coming up. How dare you get me to stay and listen? Like you don't say that, right? No. So like if you have a headline or if you're putting out good notes and then people come and they say, oh my gosh, like there's substance here, like great. So my encouragement is to and every post doesn't have to be 1,000 words, but my encouragement is to really populate it with stuff with good content, right? Not just fluff.
Well, and you need to, excuse me, you'll find more of this in the PDF that we sent out, but you need to look at what your audience likes. So, I like to look at posts that are getting interaction and then kind of think, well, what could I do along those lines? But, I tilt it toward me. I tilt it toward heaven, toward eternity. Notes are important. There are some people like I follow Wes Pierce. He does Escape the Cubicle, and he has a lot of tips and good tips. He's worth a follow. And he talks about that notes can really be a building machine for you. And I've seen this happen because I was just posting occasionally, maybe twice a week. And then I found something that really resonated with people. And so I worked off that, continued with that, and I post 1 to 2 times a day now. And it's brought in probably over 100 followers in the last couple of weeks because of those notes. So keep that in mind, especially if you hate notes, that might be a way of also gaining more traction on Substack. Any other thoughts from panelists? Yep, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Julie, I will keep that in mind. I will hear your voice in my ear saying, keep going with notes. And I hate to call anyone out, but Kate, I would love to hear a little bit more from you, just about your experience.
All right, thanks. Yeah, like Julie, I also found I had some success with notes, and there were 2 notes in particular that were really, really popular. And most of my notes, I might get like 10 likes, a couple comments here and there. So I would say like persevere, and maybe you'll just get inspiration one day for something that will really help you grow. And I think that most of my growth, so I've gone from like 100 subscribers to 1,000 in, I guess, I don't know how many months, 4 to 6 months. And I put it down to like 2 notes and 1 newsletter post that I wrote that were really popular. And all the rest are just kind of average. There was just like 1 post and 2 notes that really helped me grow. So I just like, even if you're only getting a couple subscribers here and there, then just persevere, because you never know when inspiration will strike. It just like happens. And I had no idea that. I was just walking to church one Sunday. I had this idea in my head about a note, and it's a little controversial. And that's one of the reasons why I got so many subscribers, because I got so much dialogue on the note that, so controversy, that's sometimes I feel like with the algorithms and stuff, because they do reward controversy. And obviously we don't want to be controversial just for the sake of it. But if you feel led to do that, then it helps.
Thank you, Kate. Appreciate that. And that's very, very true. They love genuineness. They love realness. I think one of my top notes was literally a picture of my dad, and he's old. So all of a sudden I was talking about he's doing this and this is happening, and people are resonating with that, right? Who have aging parents. So Substack is not the place to be a fake person. It's not the place to hold back. I mean, obviously you want to protect your privacy, right? but you are going to find the most traction if you are genuine. And you admit to these things. You struggle with sin just like the rest of us, and you're not afraid to say that, right? Which is why I think, right, John's newest book is going to resonate so much with Christians who are struggling with addiction. So thank you, Kate. Yes, I appreciate hearing more from you as well. What are the benefits of offering paid posts? Now, I would just say that obviously you get a little money for your writing, but does anybody else have any else you want to note on that in the panel?
I think when you do that, and I said this earlier, don't think that you are going to be able to quit your job. And, because I know there are some people that charge ridiculous amounts, but I just went from $5 to $7, and it's like, I'm not I'm in the red because I use some of that money then to do Facebook ads that say, hey, I'm writing an email, so don't think that it's going to be, this ridiculous moneymaker. But for me, it allows two things. I think one is even though I'm vulnerable, there are things that I'm like, man, if I'm going to share this, I want you to really be someone that maybe that I can trust is a wrong word because I haven't met all of you. But it's like I want to get this out there, but this isn't for all 8,200 of you. So especially if you are being vulnerable, there are things I talk about in my page that I'm like, yeah, this is for the inner circle, for sure. And then I think the other thing is Substack doesn't do verification. The only way you can be quote unquote verified is if you are a bestseller. The only way you can be a bestseller is if you have paid turned on. So so having that little check mark and badge is something that you have to earn, and that's how Substack makes you earn it.
Perfect. Thank you, Jon. Any other comments on that? All right. Perfect. What do you recommend for strategy? People, as authors in particular, there's all these platforms. When I started out on Twitter, I have a huge following on Twitter, but Twitter does little for me. So I have pulled back from that and I'm putting more into Substack. What do you recommend for strategy? Because it seems like every time something comes up new, now there's threads. What do we focus on as ministries and authors?
I have to go soon,
Okay.
but I would love to share a little bit of what I've learned. I think it's just, you look at all the different opportunities and you pick which ones you want to focus in on.
Mhm.
Like I have stopped doing anything on Twitter, except for looking up what's happening in the NBA. But I've stopped doing anything on Twitter because I don't it doesn't work for me and it frustrates me. I've
Right.
stopped. I've put different things on Instagram than I put on Substack. Right. And so it's like taking all this into consideration. What I put on notes is also what I put on threads. I don't spend any time on threads. I can just click 3 times and post it and then let it be and let that baby cook. I think it's also you have to take care of yourself in this.
Mhm.
And it's so if Substack is giving you life, you can spend time there. If just creating posts on Substack is giving you life and is something that you can help manage your mental health or your spiritual health there, do that. If you can't do stuff on notes, then don't do stuff on notes. Don't spend time there. You have to be careful with yourself, and you'll grow at your own pace. I don't know if growth is not the goal. I think connection is the goal. So if you're connecting with other people, then keep doing what you're doing. Um, I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to approach it. I would say find what works for you. Offer yourself a rhythm and routine for a little while. Stick with that. And then don't be afraid to make those changes. Also, if you create I have written long poems. And there's some of those poems where I just enjoy a couple of the lines. Well, then that's a note, right? So you have a post. There are notes that come out of the post. You can make a video if you want. You already probably have the content. Don't be afraid to go back to what you have already created or what you've already written. Maybe rewrite it. There's a lot there. We don't have to exhaust ourselves to just keep up. You probably are already doing enough.
Thank you. That
I
was
don't know.
good,
Those are my
Tanner.
thoughts. Anyways,
I
thank you so
appreciate
much for
it.
having me.
You're
I have to go.
welcome.
I'm going to
Thanks
go
for
Zoom with
coming.
some third graders.
Woohoo,
So
have fun.
big day.
That's great.
I appreciate y'all. I'll talk to y'all later. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. I love what Tanner said about if it gives you life, right? If there's something, if you don't want to be on a platform or it's dragging you down, or maybe for like me, if it's too political, you can let it go and not feel guilty about that, right? God will help you grow wherever He plants you. All right, we have some questions in the chat, so I'm trying to go through those here for those of you that want to hang out with us a little while longer. Ashley, is there one or two you would recommend that we haven't really covered? You're muted, my friend. You're still
I do
muted.
it.
Oh,
I do
there
it
she is.
every time.
That's all
Okay,
right.
I'm gonna look at I took photos of them all because I knew the chat would be like nuts. So, okay, here was one. How do you manage the subscription emails so that I can follow people instead of emails? Sometimes I have a hard time locating the follow button. Oh, they did respond. Does anyone know?
Yeah.
Again, want to maybe just restate that? Like, because I've had a hard time finding the follow button versus the subscription button.
That
Yeah.
was
If
my
it's,
question, and I just figured it out
Oh,
today.
you
So it was like worth it. You have to
yeah,
okay.
go
if,
to their about page,
Okay.
go to their about page, say no thanks on subscription, go to their about page, scroll clear to the bottom, and there's always that follow button there. And I
okay.
never knew that before. Some of them were on the three dots, some
Yeah.
didn't
Then
have
if you
any.
have the app on your phone, you can go to the three dots and you'll usually find it. But that's
And
another way
then,
to grab it as well. Yeah.
but it's not always there, Julie.
Yeah.
Some
If it's not
places
there. Yeah.
don't have it there, and then you're going, oh, but I really want to follow them, so I'll subscribe, and then the emails sort of snowball.
I love
Right.
that.
So that is amazing. And then I went in the settings and I turned off the email thing, so it's
So that
not
you
even
weren't getting
an option. As
emails.
long as I don't
Yeah.
click subscribe,
Yeah.
then just follow once I go there. But you have to say no thanks, and it feels so bad saying no thanks starting and then going to their
Listen,
about page.
Okay.
let me tell you, Patricia, and
Yeah,
I
John.
say this to people, is your email inbox, especially now, is the most important piece of real estate you can give anyone, right?
Mm.
So don't feel bad. I mean, and I said this in the chat, I would say most of the time, I follow someone before I give them a subscribe. And because it's like, Kate brought this up too, of like, if I'm going to give you the most important real estate that I own, because it's not in your Facebook feeds, it's not in your Instagram feeds, it's not any of those, it's not even your mailbox, right? Advertisers, everyone wants your email. It's the most important thing you own. And so I think, when I subscribe to something, it means something more, because I'm like, no, I'm giving you something. So when someone subscribes to me, I take it as like, that means something more. So don't feel bad about that.
I
Perfect.
have
Thank
a couple
you.
more questions. I mean, I just will, fire them off. Any advice on how to start your first blog post? I am totally new to the platform and want to touch the heart at the very beginning.
I think you have to, maybe John agrees. I think you kind of have to find your topic first. On my website, I have a blog, but there I write about author events. I sometimes do like movie reviews, things like that. My Substack is just my heaven stuff. It's just my near-death experience, what God's teaching me, my recovery from that. You can also set up different publications for it as well. So, depending on what you're going to write about, I would try to settle on a theme first. Now, some authors do newsletters, on Substack. They'll do a little article of the month and, giveaways and whatever they do. I'm not sure how those work because I don't really do those so much. I just write blog posts and then put stuff at the bottom. But it needs to be in your area of passion, right? Something God is speaking to you about and something that's on theme with where you want that Substack to be. Consider it kind of a brand, if that helps. John, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think you nailed it, right? And Caroline has done a really good job of this too, of just saying like, here's what my Substack is about, right? And so maybe sometimes even that first post is an introductory thing. It's an introductory post. It's here's what I'm writing about. And sometimes I had this teacher in high school who on his test, he said, there's always a pattern to the test. And sometimes the pattern is there's no pattern, right? So even if your Substack, if you come out and say, listen, my Substack is, and guess what? This is what mine is. I get up every morning and I write what the Lord tells me to write. Even though I generally talk about mental health and addiction and whatnot, it really is that. Like sometimes it's about my kids, sometimes it's about a Bible verse, sometimes, so even there, like no one is saying, Caroline is way more focused on hers. I'm not. Mm-hmm. But I think if you tell people are just upfront about it, then they know what to expect.
Mm-hmm. But hers are all in a niche still of recovery, right? And addiction and those things.
Right.
So even if you're going to be all over the place, under one umbrella is a good place to be. People will follow you for that umbrella. So think of it that way. Hopefully that was helpful. Ashley, one more question?
Sure.
Okay.
How can I best grow a Substack that blends poetry? Well, we kind of answered it, but that's okay. How can I best grow a Substack that blends poetry, theology, and personal storytelling without confusing or narrowing my audience?
Yeah, I would follow Tanner for starts because that's exactly what he does.
Exactly.
You can make different publications on Substack, but what I would do first is build your following within one publication. And like I'm to that point now too. I'm like, do I divide off and do miracle and angel stories? And yes, I finally did because I had people unsubscribing from the main blog because they wanted the miracle stories, I felt. So I made 2 separate ones, then also one for Cascade Christian Writers for writing tips. And that helps kind of divide it out so you don't lose people. Jon, do you have insights on that?
I think that's perfect. No,
Yeah.
I think, and we kind of covered it a little bit too. Is just be honest. Say like, hey, this is a blog about poetry, theology, whatever the other thing is.
Right. If you can get away with it anywhere, it is on Substack that you can get away with it. So great. Thank you, everybody. Can I pray for us really quick before we close it off? All right. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time. And I just pray that you would bless us going forward as you have called us to help get the word out, God. And I just pray that people would feel encouraged to not just do that today, but to build things, not for our platform's sake, but for connection and to bring people to your kingdom and to you, God. I thank you for all these people on the call that could truly make an impact if we reach out and do so. God, bless us as we go forward. Thank you for this time today and for our panelists. In your name I pray. Amen.
I have one more question if somebody has troubleshooting. I clicked latex editor and I cannot get this thing off and it looks wonky. It was I just test things out and usually you can delete them. And I don't know if anybody knows.
I have never heard of that. Jon, have you heard of that by chance?
I've seen it. I would search the Substack help articles.
But okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Go to that.
Thank you all for coming. I appreciate you all.
And thank you, Jon. We appreciate you. Take care, friends.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.